We are live streaming if you're on the call, just so you're aware. Like to make sure I make that announcement just so everybody knows.
Yep.
Hi, John.
Hey, how's it going today?
Good. How are you, buddy?
Oh, not bad.
Hey, Chuck. What's up, man?
How are you, Jimmy?
I'm good, sir. How are you?
Good. Hey, Jimmy, I've got a question for you. Kind of almost a historical question. How long has Allied been around?
1981.
No kidding. Wow.
Yep. Yes, sir.
All right. Meeting is up.
Hey there, John.
Hey, how's it going?
Good.
Life's good.
Hello, everybody.
Hello.
Hey,
How's it going today?
coming in loud and clear.
You can hear me today?
Yeah.
Hello, Mayor Mike. How are you?
Well, no, you have problems with everybody hearing me. That's weird. Oh, well.
We can fix that.
So why do you show up twice, Chief?
Because, let's see, because I don't have a camera on my computer. So I have to use, I'm using my phone for the visual and the audio. But I hear better on the computer with my earbuds. And if I lose you on the phone, because the phone hasn't been working that great, I have a backup.
All right. And John, we did send out invites to the planning commission, right?
Some of them are with us right now. We have Jordan Hudson on the line. Chuck Howard is here.
Yes,
Hey, Chuck, long time no talk.
yes.
Here too.
We can only see the top of your head.
Me?
Yeah, now
Oh, okay.
we can see you. Hey, what's going on, Jim?
How you doing, sir?
Good. Try to stay cool. Pretty hot out there today.
Oh, man. Yeah, for sure.
Gordon, how are you? Hi, Ursula.
You want to volume up?
No. Everybody sounds fine.
Don't you like these pictures? You can fix your hair and
Yeah, it's nice.
Hey, Ursula, did the strawberries survive?
do what?
Yes, most of them are doing really good. Now we just have to take care of the weeds growing all over them.
Oh, okay. Good to know.
Yeah, thank you very much.
I have more if anybody wants more strawberry plants.
Hello, Carmen.
Hi, Mayor. Hi, everybody.
You're a kitty cat.
Hi, Carmen.
Yeah, I heard a cat too.
Must be yours.
Who's on the phone call
That's
7-384-6450. Who do we have?
Nah, that's me, bud.
Oh, that's you doing the dual thing. Okay.
Yeah, I don't know why.
You got a cat up there, Jim?
No.
Okay.
You can tell us.
No.
I got a big giant German Shepherd though.
Let's see. We're still waiting on Andy. There's Andy. Hi, Art. How are you? Still waiting on Mr. Bolin as well. How was everybody's weekend?
Good.
Hey, John, how are you? And what, Kate Collier, Bill Mayer, Cindy Olson.
Hey, Andy and Mayor, what's the word on schools up there? What are they doing? My weekend was ruined by Denver Public Schools, pushing
what-
things back again.
What happened, Carmen?
Oh, they just formally announced that they were pushing back the in-person learning date that I have all parents down here had been sort of hoping for a while. So I understand the why, but boy, it was kind of a surprise. So
What's the date now?
beginning of September, they pushed it back at least a week, September 8th or something, for again in person. And that's, that's what me and a lot of parents would love to happen if it can happen safely. So we'll see.
We've been talking about, and Karen Quambach, they've got a whole restart program ready to go. Have you heard anything different, Chief? No. So I think I haven't heard anything else that we're going to start any later than our normal start date, and they're going full in person.
In person.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay, great. I think I haven't looked at the numbers recently, but I imagine your positive rate is probably better than the metro area. Is that true, Mayor?
Yes. Yeah. We're
Okay.
very few. Yeah.
Good.
And I know the high school is big enough that they can probably, our classes are, my daughter's class was only 51 people. So, there's the attendance at the school not that high.
Yeah.
All right. There's Cindy Olson. You're on. Can you hear Cindy?
Hi there. Do you hear me?
We can.
Yep.
All right, we're going to go ahead and get started. We're about 5 minutes after. What we wanted to do, and the idea of us coming together as a group and as a whole, and to have a discussion and try to learn some things. If you remember, it's been close to a year now ago, we had somebody come to us for a development and had the city a service plan for them to, the city signed onto a service plan for them to pursue a metro district. We have a good idea, if it hadn't already been done, there's going to be another project that will bring an idea of forming another metro district within our community. Argo looks like they may be needing to try to do this. Do we want this hit the table and us having to listen to it? I just wanted Carmen to come in and give us a good rounded information that we can start chewing on and pose some questions about. The big fear of metro districts, and we've seen them across the state, of failing, and some bad things came out of them. We do know there are some good things and they can work good, but also we understand that there are some bad ramifications of these special districts or the metro districts also. One thing that I want to re-acknowledge is that the service plan comes to Planning Commission in the city. However, everybody can vote no, and it still gets to go to the next level at the district court and be put into place. Kind of question myself about why the dog, if our ruling doesn't really matter, and maybe Carmen can help us also understand why it's set up that way, and the have to hear it amongst our community, and then even with a no vote, it can still be approved at. When the Pine Slope one came to us, it was just kind of, and I'll admit it was put in our face really quick. This was something that was trying to get going, get teeth, and take off. And I even postponed a vote so that the council could have additional time to really try to understand and look at the materials better and do their own research and find out how it can negatively impact either the area or the city in the future. So that's what this is all about, for us to be able to ask Carmen questions. We didn't bring anybody here to be a part of this. That might be the applicants that Barb's on as well from the planning side that can give us additional information. And, some other thoughts that you remember Alan Tiefenbach was here as our planner back when the first one came through. And now we have another longtime planner and background with these types of things. Give us some true information, good information, bad information, of how these things are good, bad, and ugly. So with that, I'm going to just and everybody in their package should have gotten a presentation. We'll just kind of walk through this. We really want people engaged, asking questions, and making sure that we understand over the hour. And if we need to do another meeting again like this, I'd be more than happy. I want everybody to feel comfortable with what may be coming to Planning Commission and Council in the very near future. So with that, Carmen, I'm going to turn it over to you and let you take off with it. Thank you, Carmen. Thanks everybody for being here tonight.
You bet, and thank you, Mayor. And I will start with a clarification and a correction on what the mayor just said in one respect, and that is that the city's decision or input on the service plan does not matter. That is not at all true. And I'm sorry if there was misunderstanding on that point, Mayor. Here's procedurally and substantively what the deal is on the service plans. And, with your blessing and indulgence, I'll address that first before we dive into that presentation. When a proposed special district is wholly located within a municipality, so when a proposed district is absolutely contained within municipal boundaries, as is the case, or I should say, as was the case with Soda Creek Highlands, and as will be the case for a forthcoming proposal, in that instance, the service plan goes to the municipality and the municipality only. And why I say that is what is more typical is a special district being proposed, at least in part, in unincorporated county lands, sometimes wholly in unincorporated county lands. That is more typical, I would say, across the state of Colorado than districts that are completely within a city or town. So for the most part, we see these special district service plans be proposed and presented to the BOCC, the county commissioners. Sometimes, however, they come just to you, to the city decision makers. And by the way, what is strictly required by statute is only city council review and input and approval. However, we as a city recognize and appreciate and value very much the input and review of our planning commission. So we will be having in Idaho Springs a two-step review process of planning commission and city council, even though that's not technically required by statute. But we told the applicants before and for the upcoming proposal, look, we need to have both bodies review the service plans. So again, what will happen ultimately, the service plans reviewed locally by the planning commission, then reviewed by the city council. And to be clear, it is the statutes contemplate that the governing body, the city council in our case, if it approves the resolution, will do so by a resolution of approval. It's not an ordinance. It doesn't require two readings. It is simply a resolution, one reading. It would become effective. And if that resolution approves the proposed service plans, then the proponents of the district take that resolution of approval and take it to district court. And in that event, the statutes require the district court to order an election. Now, what happens if the city council, if you were to say on a proposed service plan, no, we are not going to adopt a resolution of approval. We do not approve this plan. We disapprove. Well, is the proposed district dead in the water? No. However, they have a much tougher row to hoe. And that is, in order to then, if the municipality does not adopt a resolution of approval, what the proponents of a district would have to do is to petition the district court to review your decision, city council. And the standard of review in that event is very much like the standard of review that is in place for land use decisions, which maybe, as you know, is incredibly deferential to you. Basically, a court on a land use decision under Rule 106 of the Civil Rules of Procedure, and it's the same language here under these special district statutes, that a district court will review your local decision if you disapprove a district service plan under the arbitrary and capricious standard, which means the district court will let your decision, your disapproval, stand, and it won't mess with it, and it won't overturn it, and it won't order an election, and it won't allow the district to proceed to try to form unless the district court determines that you as a council, in disapproving the plans, acted arbitrarily or capriciously. And I can tell you that under the law, that means that you went way off the reservation and made a decision that had next to no support behind it or no evidence behind it. Case law says, what's enough evidence to be reasonably supported, right? To not be arbitrary. Courts have said some evidence, a shred, a scintilla. I mean, these are pretty low bars that courts have said. You've got to have some evidence that supports your decision on the record. And if you do, the district court will leave your decision alone. So you could effectively disapprove a service plan, and pretty much, if we act within the bounds of the law and there's sufficient evidence on the record to support your decision, stop that district formation process from proceeding. So are there any questions about that before I delve into what was in the packet? Sorry to start off with a clarification and a correction, Mayor.
And I'm sorry because on the last one, I don't know why the impression that's the way it worked, and that's just what I felt that I received. Thanks for clarifying that.
Sure.
Not exactly what I said. So thank you for that.
So Carmen, if it would go to district court, if we voted no, it would go to district court, would we have legal representation there with the proponent of it as well to discuss it with the court, or is it just they go by themselves and we have nothing to say? You know, as far as legal language.
Yes. We would, much like a land use appeal, I sort of drew that analogy a little bit earlier, much like that, or it would be a situation where we as a city and we as your legal counsel could enter our appearance and represent the city to basically defend your decision, right? And to argue to the district court why it was not arbitrary and capricious. So indeed, the review would be, because of the standard of review that the court is applying, the court would order a transcript of your hearing and it would be a somewhat paper review, like rather than a trial. However, we as a city would have the opportunity, just like the proponents of the district, to file a brief in support of and defending the council's decision.
Would this district court be in Georgetown?
Yes.
To your knowledge, other than the one that was approved by the city council and went to, got approval by the district court, I don't know when, a year ago, I don't know, Mayor, whenever it was. Was that the first one in this county it was ever presented to the district court? To your
Oh,
knowledge?
no. Oh, no.
So we
Not
have
at all.
others in this county that, okay,
Yes.
okay. Because the judge was unaware of the mechanisms and it was explained to her by the council that was there, and that's how she learned about it. So I think it was her first one, but I'm just
Well,
curious. Thank you. I'm sorry, I don't want to take up much time.
No, you bet. I want to, was it about the time that a judge retired up there? That sounds right to me, Art. I think the judge who did indeed receive the petition and the plans and ordered the election, this was a new ball game to that particular judge.
It wasn't, and in her defense, she openly said that. So I mean, she was, quite upfront with her knowledge or lack of it. So.
Yeah. Yep.
Thank you.
You're certainly welcome.
So Carmen,
Yes.
if under Title 42, pretty much if they meet the requirements to form a special district, why would it even become a voted on issue by council then? If, let's say we all vote in a majority or unanimous even decision of no, at that point in time, would you be like, guys, you can't do that? Or would you let that vote or ruling stand and then make it onto the developer's problem or whomever it may be doing the application, even though they met all the guidelines to be quote unquote approved for this under Title 42?
And that would, Jim, I would say it would depend on, it depends, sneaky lawyer answer, but somewhat true, on the evidence that you get at the hearing. If you indeed, as a council, vote unanimously or simple majority, no, and that is based on enough evidence during the hearing that, quite frankly, it does not meet the criteria, then any proponent who has very good counsel, and we always hope they do, and I will sort of project ahead and say, the district that's going to be proposed has a very well-known and very well-respected firm helping them, and I think they do have very good legal counsel. If a decision of no were supported by evidence on the record during the hearing, it certainly would be the hope, and it wouldn't be up to me, to be clear. It would really be up to the proponents at that time, if they got a no from you, whether they wanted, right, on their own legal advice from their own attorneys, to say, hey, district court, we think that the city council in Idaho Springs was arbitrary and capricious here. Are you with us? So that would be up to the proponents to try to pursue that. Jim, does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does. It's just a confusing thing that it's like, well, if they, met this, and this, they're pretty much going to be granted the special district. So a no vote or a yes vote really is a moot point.
You know what? Let's talk about.
So Carmen, I just had one point of clarification. I don't know if you want to cover it now or cover it later. I think one of the things that's really important for elected and appointed officials to fully understand who White, Ankle, or whoever is coming forward, who they are and how this differs from normal legal counsel. Because counsel probably knows that these people want to come before both the planning commission and city council. And I think it's just helpful when you're dealing with metro districts to sort of understand who the players are.
Okay. Now, the proponents of the plan will have attorneys, right, who represent them. I guess that's what you're alluding to, Barb. So much like legal counsel who are representing a land use applicant, those would be the attorneys who may appear before you planning commission as well as you city council.
Yeah, I think the nuance here is that when a metro district is moving forward, the applicant that is proposing the metro district ends up bringing in, as Carmen alluded to, legal counsel. And typically the legal counsel, all they do for the most part is metro districts. And so they're very skilled in the law, and it's not like you're sort of normal attorney. And so that's what I wanted people to sort of understand. This is what they do. They have a means of moving forward, and that's why they have already asked staff if they could make particular presentations. It's just it's enough different from a land use application that I think it's important, particularly for the city council, to understand who these people are.
But with that said, Barb, we still have the option of yes or no based on how we think it's going to affect whatever they're trying to do or not do. Is that correct?
Correct. But I'm just saying that and once Carmen finishes her presentation, I can provide you some background on how a lot of these metro districts have been formed recently, particularly in locations that are tourist destinations or are wanted, that's part of their clientele. But I think Carmen needs to go through sort of the overview. I have just found with other municipalities, it's sort of, it gets a little bit fuzzy in terms of who are these people that are coming in front of us.
Do we get to know who the principals are as well? And I know you say they're attorneys, but do we get to get a resume or a profile on the participants, the principals who are trying to push this district forward? Have they done it before? Have they been successful? That type of thing?
Yes, I'm sure. And the particular people that the Argo team has contracted with has done many of these metro districts. Many.
Okay, so I'm glad you clarified. I didn't know where you guys were talking. I might have missed it, where this metro district was being proposed at. So it's the Argo mines that's in that area. That's
Carmen, I think I'll recuse myself at this point. We seem to be guiding into the Argo, and I really need to bow out at this point.
Well, and I would say we're not here to talk about any particular district.
No, I was just curious where the district was, where the location of the district was going to be. That's all. Right. You don't need to leave, Bob, as far as I'm concerned. I'm done with asking that question.
Okay, well. Okay, well, that's fine. But anyway, I don't have any problem. I mean, if you want to talk about that, I'm good with that too. So no problem.
No, okay. I would rather not. That's okay. That's okay, Bob.
Okay, Carmen.
And and it's fine to me if it's fine with you, Mayor, and everybody else if we just sort of free form like this. I mean, the PowerPoint's in there and it's a very basic sort of, and I'll touch on that, and I'm happy to. It's very basic information about what these districts are and how they function and how they're formed, etc. I want to make sure, however, if there are particular questions that come up in the discussion like this, that we address them. And what I hear and what you will receive more information on when you planning commission and you council get a particular service plan presented to you, you will get more information about this particular issue and about what the criteria are. What is your decision-making process? How are you supposed to decide? What is the standard here? As always, we as staff will give you more information on those points, but just to sort of preview that, here's what the statutes say in terms of what are the criteria here? What we get these plans, okay, we get to make the decision that a court is supposed to leave alone, right? Unless we're completely arbitrary. So what are we tasked with deciding? And the criteria for approval under the statute are that the decision maker, council in this case, with the advice and counsel of the planning commission, shall approve a plan if it finds that 1, there is sufficient existing and projected need for organized service in the area. So there's a need for whatever they want to do and what they propose to do. That the existing service in the area is inadequate for present and projected needs. So basically, in our case, right, when we are asked about districts that are going to be completely in the city, that means the city can't adequately serve the area. That the proposed district is capable of providing economical and sufficient service to the area, and that the area to be included in the district has or will have the financial ability to discharge the proposed indebtedness on a reasonable basis. So in sort of plain terms, does the area need the services that the district proposes to provide? Does the area need those things? Do they need the public improvements? Do they need water? Do they need sewer? Do they need parks and rec? Do they need fire service? Whatever it is they may be proposing, does that area need it? And is the city not providing it right now? And then under their plans, under the proposed budgets, under the proposed numbers and figures that they give to you in the plans, does it look like the valuation, right, and the property that's proposed in the district is adequate enough to financially serve indebtedness to provide those improvements? Those are the questions that you will be tasked with answering. And quite frankly, that the service plans better adequately address and answer your questions. So again, staff reports will go into those criteria again, but I wanted to sort of get you thinking that when you do get service plans, and it will be very soon that you get them, because we as staff have some proposed service plans, start thinking about those things and how you could evaluate those things and how we as staff can help you evaluate this. Any questions on that?
So the difference for the applicant, this particular municipality, as compared to the applicant for the prior municipality, is we have a record to look back at and can we examine how successful their business is or not. And if they have the business wherewithal and what have you to go forward, whereas a developer comes in and he has nothing, no record for us to look at, only plans for us to look at. Do we have a history to look at as compared that we didn't have a history to look at? Is that the difference in applications?
Well, I suppose if you, as a commission and as a council, determine that an applicant's track record is relevant to his or her or its credibility, right? And ability of the, again, I think that's potentially germane to that last criteria, which is, do we think that this proposed district area has the wherewithal to adequately serve the financial debt? I think it's a little attenuated to try to stitch that into that criteria. An applicant's track record, say, in Longmont, right, or on the western slope.
Mhm.
But to your point, and it's a fair one, that I think could reasonably be said to relate to a proponent's or a testifying party's credibility, or I think that's fair.
Okay, thank you.
You bet. Okay, we're almost halfway through here, but this is great. Again, I'm happy to answer questions in a very sort of free-forming way, but to maybe quickly, and then I know Barb has some maybe particular information or examples she would like to share with you. So again, I'll very quickly but basically cover what is a very basic presentation in your packets, and that is, what the heck are these special districts? Looking at the very first sort of panel on the PowerPoint. And these things are what are called quasi-municipal corporations. They are political subdivisions of the state of Colorado, like you as a city are a political subdivision. As such, it is subject to the same sort of public meetings laws that you all are familiar with and that you all are subject to, like the Sunshine Law. They're organized under what is known as Title 32 of the Colorado Revised Statutes. Those of you who love municipal law know that that's the direct neighbor of Title 31, which is the title of the CRS that govern our municipal operations. So even in the organization of the statutes, you can see that we're not siblings, but we're perhaps cousins of special districts. They're quasi-municipal corporations. There are some similarities. They are tax exempt financing mechanisms, much like municipalities. They can, through tax exempt bonds and financing mechanisms, finance public improvements. To the next slide there, what can a special district potentially finance? And it's not everything. They don't have the full menu of available services that we have as a municipality, but they have under statutes, and you can read those as well as I, a variety of improvements that they can as a special district finance. How do they finance? Again, to the next slide, as I alluded to, much like municipalities, they can issue bonds, and those bonds can be repaid out of the special district revenues, which are usually, and will be in our case, if approved, or in the case of districts within our city boundaries, those bonds would be repaid by ad valorem or property taxes. There are fees. Put example, snow removal fees, trash collection fees, sometimes sort of like an HOA, right? A district can collect fees for certain services. Those can also fund debt. Metro districts do generally have a sales taxation power, but not in areas where a municipal sales tax already exists. So they do not have that power, or would not have that power of sales tax in the city of Idaho Springs. So really they would be looking at property taxes, at ad valorem taxes, at a mill levy. What I think is important to note, and this came up a lot with our last experience with Soda Creek Highlands, and what's important to note is that the city as a whole, the approving jurisdiction, the council, the council's budget, the city's budget, the budget of taxpayers of the city of Idaho Springs in general, is not obligated for a special district's debt, right? Much discussion was had last time about that. And to be clear, the debt that the district incurs is its own and does not morph into or become the city's in any event. The procedure for forming a district, as we know, I'll sort of quickly go through this because we were through this recently and we kind of touched upon this a little bit. The service plan is submitted to us as a city. Again, we will have a two-part review process with our planning commission and our council. If approved, that service plan then goes to the district court and the court orders an organizational election. I think what should also be clear and was a little muddied, I think, last time was this election. Who votes in this election? Well, eligible electors of the district, of the proposed district, not citywide election, not all the registered electors of the city of Idaho Springs, but the defined eligible electors of the special district. And those are essentially property owners within the district, the proposed district boundaries, the properties that are within that territory. Folks who own property there can vote on whether or not they might in the future be subject to tax to fund improvements that would directly benefit their property and their property only. And when you think about it, I think in that way it makes some intuitive sense that, look, the improvements that the district is seeking to provide are limited to the area of their own sort of inner circle, literally, of the municipality, as it were. And as such, those folks who directly benefit from those improvements, who have skin in the game, are the ones who can vote on not only whether to form, but then whether or not to incur debt and to have a Tabor question. And real quickly again, I know because we only have an hour here tonight, but again, as Mayor said, happy to have more discussion later. How does a special district function after they organize? On to the next slide. They are governments again. They do meet regularly subject to the Sunshine Law. They, like you, have perhaps someone like Barb or me, legal counsel, planners, developers, certainly engineers, because they have plans for improvements. They can contract with and employ consultants and staff.
Most of that's private though, right, Carmen?
What's that, Jim?
Most of that's all private, like within the, like either investors or owners of that property, let's say developer, correct? So you or I wouldn't get a chance or a choice to be on the board or the council because we'd have to have vested interest into the property.
That's right. That is right.
So
good question, Jim. The to be eligible to, like, say like you are elected folks and are appointed in the case of the commission. You're eligible because you live in Idaho Springs to serve in city council. To be eligible to be on the board of directors for a district, you must be again an elector of that district. And as we know, that's defined as someone who owns property in the district.
Yeah.
Right.
Carmen, do you want to just quickly, because I think it's important, and I think we've moved, I think metro districts are better than they were years ago, but 2 points. Sometimes when a metro district is formed, they create what's called a slave or master district. And what that does is that limits participation typically to the initial developer and the developer's friends. And so it's a way of being able as the board to vote on things that are in the best interest of the overall development. The second point that I wanted to make, I think, Art, back to your point, while Carmen is right in pointing out that the municipality does not incur the debt of a metro district, what does happen, and perhaps the best example, if you wanted to look it up online, is the Mount Carbon Metro District, which is right across from the Bandimere Speedway. And that Metro District was set up, it went into default, new people came in, and when you then look at the debt load of that district, it's quite high. And so the people that bought homes, I forget what that's called. There's a lot of homes that a developer built there. They had a lot of debt because they took the old Mount Carbon debt, which went bankrupt, and then added that to what they needed to develop, a pretty large piece of land. So again, it is not going to rest on your shoulders. It's just that if a metro district goes belly up, the next person that comes along has to pick up that debt. And so the mill levy just gets that much higher, if that makes sense.
Just for that district though.
Right, correct.
Okay.
Yep.
And Barb, is there ever an ending limit onto that for let's say the property owner who does decide to buy into that where there is a special district, or is that an infinite increase repaid to these bonds?
So the way in which you as a property owner experience the indebtedness of the metro district is through your mill levy for your piece of property.
Correct. My question is does it continue? Does it ever cease to go up? I mean, does it hit a cap of some sort?
Not that I've experienced. What about you, Carmen?
Well, there you go.
They're generally is a 50 mil cap, Jim. And it's funny because I was actually looking at the bankruptcy process for special districts today. And to be approved to file for bankruptcy, it's my understanding that a district has to demonstrate its inability, again, to go bankrupt, to be able to fund its debt, to meet its debt obligations with, sorry, just missed that, without exceeding a 100 mil levy, I believe. And I'll beg your indulgence to follow up on this because I read this today. But generally speaking, it's a 50 mil cap. So I don't think it's limitless. And by the way, to increase debt, right, or otherwise modify a plan, including the projected financial ability or inability of the district to meet its debt, would require, again, generally speaking, the same process as the original service plan to make what are called material modifications to a plan, increase services, decrease services, take them away, again, modify the financial plans. Generally, if those are material, those would be required to go through the same process as initial district formation. So a process, and that is in addition to, I think, what Barb alluded to, any person, whether it's a developer, a company, or a single family homeowner, before that person, that or entity purchases property, that person, it's incumbent upon that person or entity, as always, Jim, to do what we know as your due diligence before you buy property and see what's going on with that, right?
Sure. Unfortunately, for, the first-time home buyer in their early 20s isn't going to, everybody here's bought a house, man. And that, you know what, I can honestly say the 5 homes that I've owned, I've never read every page, so.
Well, and you're absolutely right. And I laugh a little bit because I'm the person who drives the closing person nuts because I do read every page. So anyway, that's an occupational hazard. But unless there are again particular questions on that point, I think seeing the time we have left, I will invite Barb if there are any other particular issues you think we need to highlight for this sort of basic introductory discussion. I invite you to
I
share
think
those.
for both council and planning commission, I think that what you'll come to realize is the actual service plan is what you want to look at. And what I have found for my career, which has now spanned decades, is that the metro districts are financing more and more things. So particularly in amenity-rich communities that rely on tourism and hope that the development that they're moving forward with has amenities that are attractive to either buyers of property or visitation to whatever. They've now added, which I find quite interesting, a category called common amenities. So oftentimes in a service plan, in addition to roads, infrastructure, water, sewer, open space, they now often have a category called common amenities. And those are those sort of nice things that if you were buying or investing in a development that's within a metro district, will be paid for out of the mill levy and will be listed in the service plan. So there again are some benefits to the municipality because you may be getting amenities for that particular development that have externalities that are of benefit to the city as a whole.
That's in the service plan. How do you enforce that over time if they choose not to go forward with some of those amenities that you speak of?
I'll let Carmen answer that.
Okay.
Well, if that's really, sorry, Art, incumbent upon how do we enforce it? Well, it would ultimately be in the interests of and the responsibility of the electors of that district, who again are the ones with the true skin in the game and who are responsible for, seeing that those things are constructed if they indeed keep putting money into a pot to construct them. And as a city, it's funny, and I wonder, I don't know if Barb has experience with a city getting sort of crossways with a district, but it's the relationships I think are, oh, you're laughing, so maybe you have. The relationships can be great and they can be strained. It all depends, as you can imagine, Art, on sort of who organizes them and how responsible they are and how successful they are. But anyway, who would enforce that? It would really be incumbent upon the folks who are funding those developments and the property owners in that district to put pressure on, like you experience, the board of directors. Folks who pour money into that pot have a board of directors who ostensibly are responsible to them, who, much like you as council, the buck stops with you for city business. So again, the structure, very much like a municipal government or some other quasi-governmental entity, should ideally work the same way, where electors and taxpayers in that district have a group of people like you upon whom they could put pressure.
Yeah, let me comment on where I think things get a little bit fuzzy for elected officials. And I don't necessarily know the solution to this, typically what happens with some of these metro districts is they start with Metro District 1. And you approve Metro District 1, and you're happy with that, and you look at the services that this development is going to provide, which means you as the municipality no longer have to provide the roads, the police, sometimes the police protection, Chris, the recreational amenities, you know, whatever they have in their service plan. So that metro district gets approved. More development occurs, and then they go for Metro District 2, Metro District 3, Metro District 4, etc. My experience is that the elected officials and people like me that has to look at these service plans, we become confused as to how much indebtedness these districts are carrying and whether it's sustainable. Because again, the important thing to note about metro districts is the metro district is dependent upon development occurring. They're not going to get anything if development does not occur. So I think that that's not in front of you today. That might be in front of you as time progresses. You know, my advice both for elected officials as well as for the citizens of a community is to fully understand and appreciate the services that that district is going to provide. Because I will tell you, I'll use Monument as an example. Monument on the west side of the highway is the town. Monument on the east side of the highway is the town with the Tri-View Metro District. And what happens is because that Metro District provides so many services, me as a resident does not know who to call should I have a complaint. Because in this particular district, they're providing so many services that typically the municipality would provide. You know, the town has sort of had to say, no, we're not providing that service, the Metro District. So I think as you move forward, it's important to be clear on what services any Metro District coming before you is going to provide. And that will be in the service plan.
So with that, we're running out of time for this. A question that I know has been in a lot of council's heads is, what happens if this bellies up? All of a sudden you get a project going, then all of a sudden there's no money to continue the project, and or it was housing that people moved into and then found out they went from $2,000 a year in property tax and increased the next year over double. Then all of a sudden they're in a position that they're moving out of their homes. And then you may have the next person say, what, my property tax is $7,000 a year? I'm not going to pay that. Do these projects just sit there and empty space, empty homes, empty commercial properties and things like that? You know, something like that could put a negative visual on our community. So what really happens when something like that happens?
Well, hold on. Oops. Sorry, Mayor. I'll let you see me again. Turn on my video. Again, the what practically speaking could proposed improvements just sit unfinished? Yes, indeed. They could. And again, I think if it became a situation where after time it became clear that the district was no longer able to meet its obligations and able to, and by obligations I mean to construct improvements, it is possible to dissolve a district. That process involves having an adequate plan to take care of the debt, however, right? So that is why sometimes those districts sit unfinished, because unless and until they're dissolved or modified by something like a bankruptcy court or an approved plan of modification, those obligations, the financial obligations, remain sort of contained, as it were, right to the area. So again, I think what's important for you, mayor and council, and for the city to know is, could, again, that debt obligation reach out beyond the boundaries of the district? And generally speaking, again, the answer is no, not without your consent, not without you as a city wanting to take that on, or willingly assume that extension. But to be fair, Mayor, that is.
We lost your audio, Carmen. We don't have any audio on you, Carmen. Sorry, Carmen, we've lost you.
So while we're waiting for her to get back, I think the other question for Carmen that I would have, and I can't remember offhand, one of the things that a lot of councils are concerned about when you go to a metro district and they talk about all of the improvements that they're going to build, the question I would have of Carmen, and I can't remember, is whether or not the council in the review of the service plan has the ability to comment on when those elements of the service plan get built. So the question, for a council perspective, is it okay for them to say, build all the roads, the private wastewater treatment facility, the private wastewater, but not include, say, any of the open space or other amenities? And I don't know, I can't remember if that's something that the council can comment on, but again, the timing of the improvements is something that I would recommend that council look at.
So Carmen just sent me a text that her computer died. She didn't have it plugged in, I guess. So she's trying to get back on for any follow-up questions before we adjourn the work session. We'll give her a couple more minutes. Does anybody else have any questions that they want to pose to Barb that we might get some information from?
The one thing that I love to tell municipalities about special districts and metro districts is, again, remember that they are their own unit of government, and as such, they can fly their own flag.
So I have a question for you. In these districts, do they contract with the municipalities for public safety and fire and EMS?
Chris, it depends on the service plan. So that's going to be the most important thing that you look at. Most metro districts that I have seen in smaller communities rely on, because they're within the incorporated municipality, so they rely on police, EMS, etc. I can't think of one I've worked on where they have sort of separate police, EMS, fire, whatever.
Okay. So this is the consideration I have. This will probably happen, somewhere down the road, but our services in the city are generated by sales tax. Whereas the county services, fire, you have the fire district, EMS, it comes out of their general fund, which are predominantly property taxes. So it kind of puts us in an awkward position where we're, as you indicated, but from my perspective, we're essentially obligated to provide them police protection, but there's essentially no means generated to supplement that service.
No, you are still with this development. You are going to be collecting sales tax revenue.
Okay, so the development is going to generate sales tax.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. And so the good news about this development, though it'll be interesting how we track it, is, we've got the gondola sales, we've got the food truck sales. This is just first phase. So as I look at it from an economic development perspective, there are a lot of mechanisms, or there are a lot of uses within phase one that will generate sales tax, and that sales tax will go to support you, Chris.
Well,
you're going to need it.
It's not so much supporting me, but the truth is we don't want to dilute the quality and quantity of public safety. If there's not a way to fill in, if the town gets bigger, inevitably the call load is going to get bigger.
Right.
And fire has a plan, EMS has a plan, the police department would have to consider some expansion at some point, depending on the increased call load.
Yeah, and this is, I don't know if anyone, I've looked at their market analysis. I think as this moves forward, it's going to be really important to look at the capacity of police, EMS, fire to handle this kind of development, because it's very different than what you're dealing with now. And I think there will be different challenges that you're going to experience, and you're going to have to adapt to that. But I think the sales tax revenue, and again, why the city, I think, was wise to move forward to this.
I think we're getting into project specific too much.
Okay.
So I think we need to kind of.
Thank you, Mayor.
Talk about
Yep.
tax and things like that. And I think that's getting into project specific detail. All right. Well, Carmen, I think is trying to sign back on because she is going to be too. So if everybody wants to take 5 minutes, if you need to do anything in the next 5 minutes, go ahead and do it. And we'll get back to start our special meeting at 10 minutes after. Okay?
You're there.
My apologies.
Oh, no worries. It was fine.
But was it the cat?
No, ironically, I have no cat. Darn computer just went blank. I was like, no.
Yeah, you were frozen on the screen there, Carmen. Just
Oh, good.
yeah.
That's good to know, Bob. Oh, no.
Well, your mouth was shut, so it's okay.
Okay, good. All right, my apologies, Mayor, Council, and Planning Commissioners.
You're taking a break.
Okay.
The implication about the cat, was that maybe attacking your computer mouse or what? I wasn't quite.
Well, we heard what we thought was a kitten earlier meowing, so.
I know. I have no cat.
Yes. Okay, I'm with you now.
I'm sorry. That was
no problem.
frustrating and ridiculous.
It's a good mouse joke, Bob.
There we go. Yeah, it was.
How are you?
Doing good. Got to tell you, Jan and I are here in a room that is unbelievably warm right now. And so I don't know about you guys, but I hope you're all a lot more comfortable.
Oh, no. All right, Mayor, let me know when everybody's back because I think that.
I ask everybody to be back on at 10 minutes after.
Oh, okay. See, if I were on, I would have known that. Sorry, Mayor.
I'm curious, do most states have mechanisms similar to the metro districts in Colorado?
Yes.
They do. Okay.
I know I didn't do it before we adjourned the earlier meeting, but thank you, Planning Commission, for being on with us. Like I said, I'm sure there's going to be another time in the near future that we reconvene and have some other questions that we want to. We just want to. I want everybody, for all of us, to have a good idea and be educated on how this all works. Okay, Bob, you still there? Jim's not back yet. There's Bob. We can see the sweat pouring off of you, Bob. And Scott Pinnell's got a jacket on, so. Okay.
There's Jim.
Jim's back. All right. 11 minutes after 7, Monday, July 20th. This is a special meeting being held by City Council. Can I have roll call, please?
Michael Hillman.
Here.
Scott Pennell.
Here.
Chuck Harmon.
Here.
Bob Bolin.
Here.
John Curtis.
Here.
Art Cacavelli.
Here.
Jim Clark.
Here.
All right, please stand with us for the pledge. I pledge the allegiance
Flag.
of the United States of America.
to the
To the republic
which it
Stand.
stands
for
One
which
nation,
indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Please be seated. Okay, council, we have an agenda in front. Do I have a motion?
I would move that we approve the agenda for the July 20th, 2020 meeting.
Do I have a
Second. Second.
All right, motion and second discussion. Hearing none, all in favor, raise your hand and say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Okay, we are gonna do, we've got a resolution number 20 in front of us. In our packets, laid out or had the resolution in there for us to take a look at. We discussed this on our last city council meeting last week, and we did a special meeting to give Carmen time to pull things together for us. And here we are. So with that, do I have a motion?
I'll move to approve resolution number 20, series 2020, a resolution approving the terms of a vendor license to Mountain Youth Pedicabs for 2020.
Second.
Who was my second?
Chuck Harmon.
All right. Okay, now we've got discussion. All right, council, is there anything that you found in the resolution or have any other discussion that we can talk about before we move formal vote?
Are they required to have insurance?
Are they required to have what, Councilor Curtis?
Insurance.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
I didn't see that.
It's not set forth in the resolution, Mayor and Council, but it is an express requirement in the code of getting their vendor license, which they have to get. And this sort of adds a couple of layers on top of those requirements that are in code, which do include insurance. Good question.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Anybody else?
And to be clear, I'm glad Chief is on this call as well. You know, sort of took a whack at conditions that I thought made some sense, but then of course routed that over to the PD and the chief to get his input on that as well. And he's looked at this, made some suggestions which have been incorporated. So we're both happy to answer any questions you might have about what's in there. And again, to be clear, just based on your initial discussion and meeting with the young man and also the woman who also attended virtually your last meeting to talk about this, I heard that a kind of a trial basis was desired. So this is for the remainder of the calendar year, knowing that eventually it'll get too cold for this to be super viable, but not knowing how long the pedestrian mall experiment will continue, not knowing how long COVID implications will continue. I thought the remainder of the calendar year was a nice round number, but certainly council, anything and everything in this resolution is up for you to tweak if you like.
Fair enough.
I saw where they're operating 30 minutes after sunset. I assume they'll have lights and reflective on those bicycles, or?
Yeah, they will be required to follow the state law. So if they're gonna ride their bikes from dusk to that 30 minutes. Now, there's no prohibition about him riding his bike around town. It's just that he cannot have customers after sunset.
Okay.
So he's required to have the same equipment as a bicycle.
Other questions, council, or any other thoughts that you would like to give us, Chief, that wasn't on this resolution?
Yeah, just one of the things I do want to clarify, it's on there after Carmen and I corresponded, is that the pedicab should not be on the road tread on Colorado. And the reason for that is that it couldn't maintain the speed, near the speed of the cars. And if they could, it would be unsafe. So to avoid any traffic conflicts, the pedicab operation will not be permitted on Colorado Boulevard. But of course, they can use the Greenway and the sidewalks on Colorado that can accommodate the pedicab.
Yep. And that's found in the third bullet point on page number 2, Mayor and Council. Pedicabs can't operate on Colorado Boulevard proper. So appreciate Chief's input on that one. Yep.
All right. Any other questions, council? Can I have roll call, Diane, please?
Michael Hillman. Scott Pennell.
Yes.
Chuck Harmon.
Yes.
Bob Boland.
Yes.
John Curtis.
Yes.
Mark Cacavelli.
Yes.
Jim Clark.
Yes.
All right, I see that Laura and Cooper are on with us. Congratulations. I hope this endeavor works out, and I think it will. Other people have talked about it before, so I'm glad that we finally have folks that are going to implement this type of endeavor. We're looking for some good things that we can continue this into the future of Idaho Springs. So thank you very much, and thanks for being on with us.
Thank you, Mayor.
Yes,
We really
thank you.
Good luck.
All right. We have a second item on our agenda under Mayor and Council. What this is about, it's probably been a couple of weeks now. We had an applicant come in for a business license for a tattoo studio, an body art studio, whatever we want to call it. And as in your packet, if you read, this was something that was changed in our code from a conditional use to an allowed use. There was some delay because we were trying to get information from Carmen, because since we haven't had anything like that in the city, we wanted to make sure what are the requirements from the state level. A lot of you or some of you were not on council when we started out marijuana. It kind of started out the same thing. We never had it. We had to approve a business license. And then as we moved forward, we discussed and had many discussions about enforcement, moratoriums on how many we would have, distancing from each other, and things like that. So if we were obligated to issue the business license when it was applied for and all the paperwork was turned in, we went ahead, Diane issued that business license. And then we wanted to bring back to council, get some direction or some information from about what the responsibility of the city proper is with an establishment like this. If you read your packet, there's not really kind of like a restaurant. People from CDPHE don't just pop in and say, hey, we're here to make sure your food is right and you're being clean and you're doing all the things you're supposed to be doing. They don't do that with these establishments. So, and to ask our police department to be the governing body and inspecting them is not in, it's their knowledge of how to do what to be looking for, of course they can read up on it. But I just wanted to bring everybody together and get some information from Carmen. And as you know, we actually later on with the marijuana, we contracted somebody to go in and inspect the marijuana dispensaries for the same reasons. That was not knowledge that Chief had. He had delved into research and how they're supposed to be operating, but operating properly and going and doing by the state guidelines that they're expected to do. So with that, Carmen, you want to talk to us for a few minutes?
Yeah, you bet, Mayor and Council. Mayor queued it up quite well, I think. And again, this discussion is not about any particular business that is or was or anything, but really the general policy issue for you, Mayor and Council, of whether or not you wish to do anything additionally to locally regulate body art establishments. And what are those? Well, those are most commonly tattoo parlors and but also piercing establishments as well. All of that is in the parameter of body art. In response to our most recent application, as you can see in the memo from me in the packet, I reached out to the CDPHE directly to say, okay, so state, what do you do with these establishments? And as you can see in my memo, we asked them point blank, look, what kind of approval would someone have to get to say open a tattoo parlor? And CDPHE said nothing. And we said, well, what sort of permits, licenses, you know, did the people who work there have to get a permit or an occupational license from you to work there? And the answer was no. Okay, would a business like this have to register with you before they operate? And again, the answer was no. So as I laid out in my memo, while the state has in-state regulations in the CCR, they have some, and I provided them in the packet with my memo. There are some regs that the state has promulgated that these establishments ostensibly have to comply with and meet. I think the state was pretty clear, which I appreciate actually, that maybe it's a complaint-driven process. They said that they aren't real active on that front. And again, I think we would all rather know that than get some sort of story from them. So I appreciate their transparency in saying, we really don't require much for folks to get up and running and do this sort of thing from the get-go. So mayor and council, as you can see, none of us are experts, I don't think, tell me if you are, in this particular science or art or health regulation. As Mayor alluded to, I don't know that our police department is, but given in particular this world we're in today and the health issues and protocols of today, we thought it was certainly worth and our obligation and duty to bring this to you to say, look, do you wish to do anything locally? I think there are at least 3 main options there at the bottom of my memo. One, first option there, hey, we could have a local license requirement and have a local body art establishment license that would and could be very much like our local liquor license or our local marijuana license, in that we wouldn't have to delve a bunch into trying to figure out some new technical requirements to have a license. We could basically say, look, you want to do this kind of business, you got to get a city license to do it. And when you file your city license application, you have to show us and submit a written plan on how you're going to comply with all these state standards. And again, those are in your packet too. We could use the state standards as our own, but have a local license. Well, what does that get us? It gets us the ability to locally go in and poke around and have a local license that you as council and, you know, chief and our cops could enforce, and you as council could maybe revoke a license if they prove to violate the terms, if they have people in there who are not following the protocols for safety and health. We would have a local enforcement option. That would be the benefit of it. It would also be a strain of city resources. There's a pro and a con. Also, council, mayor and council, you could just simply say to these folks when they come in for a general business license, option number 2 now I'm on, we could just say, hey, do you comply with state standards? Do you know about these things? And of course they'll say, oh yes, thank you very much, we do. And instead of having a local license, when we get complaints or have concerns, we could just call up the state and CDPHE and say, hey, we've got a local body art establishment. We have some concerns. Could you come up when you get a minute? That sort of is akin to number 3, the third option in the memo, mayor and council, which is, hey, leave the sleeping dog lie. Let things go as they apparently have been with the state for some time, and allow them to regulate and deal with these businesses and not enter that field or that fray as a city. So those are really, I think, the 3 main doors, but you may have other ideas and questions, Mayor and Council.
I do have a question. I'm wondering, of course, I have the signage, what's left of our sign regulation and nuisance and all that sort of thing. And I'm wondering if a series of complaints of the procedures and whatnot that's happened inside the building could actually be, after a few of them, be construed as a nuisance to the city.
So you're wondering, Councilor Bolin, if the city's nuisance enforcement process could be used if there are complaints about the way that body art is applied?
Well, among anything else, like maybe, I don't know. I'm just wondering if a series of complaints, even if they're of different nature about a business, just a wide variety of complaints. But if we get like maybe 10 or 15 or something like that, it becomes a nuisance. It seems like, I mean, from a practical standpoint of city resources. And I'm just kind of stretching here to see if there's some way we could regulate by what we have in place now.
Yep. And to your question, let's say this business, like any other, right, does generate some significant calls for service, and does generate some complaints. Now, like any other business, not to discriminate against body art establishments,
right,
if the complaints are relevant to our code requirements, for example, things like the cutting of weeds or having the required parking spaces or noise exceeding the levels that are, I mean, to your point, Councilor Bolin, if we have code provisions in place now that this business, like any other, violates, we could absolutely pursue the remedies that are already in place about whether they about code violations, whether they are health and safety or, quite frankly, noise or other kinds of things we have in the code already.
Yeah, okay, I understand what you're saying.
Yeah.
We did have complaint driven. I know we're establishment will have first time customers that it's their first tattoo, but I'm also very sure that they'll have people that have tattoos and will know. They go in there and say, "Whoa, wait a minute! I got it. This wasn't."
Right.
So it's going to be a word of mouth, and once we start hearing that, it's going to be very important for us to call CDPHE to let them know that we've had some complaints. Now, I don't know how you can complain about bad artwork. If somebody gets something, they were supposed to get a flower and they got a horn frog. Maybe y'all don't know about horn frogs. That was a mascot of the college.
Yeah, it's very Texas.
That's not, but if somebody sees that the needles aren't being changed out properly and the cleaning the surface before you get the tattoo and things like that, I'm sure that will come out in the community. We should keep an eye on that. Another
You're
thing.
talking more about infections, right?
I'm sorry?
You're talking more about infections, stuff like that, diseases.
Absolutely. Another thing that I really like council to think about, and I'd like to do this pretty quick, just like the marijuana dispensaries, council at the time did not want every building in town to be a dispensary. So we put in a plan and a policy and guidelines of distancing, how many, and things like that. Near schools was another one, kind of like the liquor license. I think that maybe the same thing we should think about is how many of these studios do we really want in our community, and do we want to think about putting a moratorium or a limit on how many of these establishments we want? Do we want them to their schools? Do we want them to their playgrounds and things like that? One would say that these kind of places attract the wrong people, and I think my establishment attracts wrong kind of people too. So we're not judging on that because I don't believe that's totally true. So what I'd like everybody to do is kind of think about some of those type of policies and guidelines that we would make into our code. So we have something for backing if somebody else comes in or 10 more people come in and say, oh, you're allowing us to do this now. We've got a place right down the street we want to do.
Because, good point, Mayor. I think those are fair analogies because the shift that occurred under our land use code, which quite frankly, I guess nobody was paying particular attention to because why would we have at the time? But the shift that has occurred under the land use code now is that such businesses are indeed uses by right, which means that they don't have to ask for anything special from the city other than a general city business license. And if they have their ducks in a row, they're incorporated, they've got insurance, they have the ability to operate, it's zoned commercial, they have a right to get that business license issued. So there could be any number. They could proliferate. Doesn't mean they will, but like Mayor said, something for you all to think about that could realistically happen now that could not have before without your consent and knowledge when these things were conditional uses. Mayor, I didn't, in council, I didn't put this in my memo, but it just occurred to me as maybe it did to you. Well, another option would be make it a conditional use again. Go back to having it be a land use issue rather than a licensing issue. I'll be frank, I think licensing is a cleaner way to deal with the potential impacts of a business on, in particular, health and safety issues. Land use regulations are good to deal with true land use issues, parking, maybe casting shadows or lighting, things like that. For health and safety, and again, analogizing to marijuana, or even maybe alcohol, the health, safety, the concerns of the community that are more about the health of the community rather than pure land use, I think are more cleanly dealt with licensing. But that's just another option, is to make it a conditional use again, Mayor, that just occurred to me.
Hey, if I can interject something, Carmen, when we first, this first came up, I did a search as well and I couldn't find anything. And I just did a Google search while we were talking. And there actually are some lengthy standards under CDP H&E, but it was adopted in 2001 and it was effective in August 2001. And I haven't found anything current. Whether or not this is current under state law, could we go through these and adopt them as ordinances as far as, the sterilization, client records, the facility and operational requirements? Can we flip those into city ordinances?
Yep. I wonder, are those akin to what's in the packet, Chris? I wonder, are they 6 CR 1010?
Yeah, it's 6 CR 101022.
22.
Why would would you recommend that's the way we proceed? Is that we go through these and just flip them into city ordinances?
Well, as I sort of said and Mayor and Council, the chief is referring to those regs that are in your packet following my memo, those CDPHE regs. Chief, we could make those as sort of mentioned under option 1 of the memo. We could make those state standards our own standards, right? So that yes, we could, for lack of a better term, pop a business for violating those standards. Locally, we could enforce them and have a consequence, right? If council wanted to go down the road of choosing, say, option number 1, which gave us some local enforcement.
So, because this is certainly something that we could incorporate into the duties of the code enforcement officer.
Okay.
Of course, any patrolman can do it, but yeah, you know, I think, I mean, it's almost like a checklist the way they've done this. So if you don't think that would be too burdensome as far as ordinances go, maybe you and I can correspond back and forth on how to proceed. I do have concerns from my experience in Austin with tattoo parlors. You know, frequently there's an association between tattoo parlors and alcohol, or intoxicated parties getting tattoos that they regret later.
Yeah.
So I think, yeah, I think either we work with the county, but if we could just, you know, assimilate these, the ones that work for us and that are in the interest of public safety, maybe that's what we should do, and maybe put a work session aside just for that purpose. But let me ask you this: if we enact any ordinances now, is this current tattoo parlor grandfathered from them?
No.
Okay. We could always, and I guess we could always fall back on the state law as well. Okay.
Yep.
I asked
Great
that
question.
early on. I asked that question that if we make policy or we make an ordinance, does that? Okay, does anybody have any thoughts, questions?
Yeah, I just want to say, like the chief, I had done some research before our meeting, because the state standard, you know, it doesn't look like it's anything but reactionary. There's nothing proactive. You know, there's nobody out there kicking the tires and doing inspections. So, barring a complaint, you know, there's really no reason for a place not to fly the fire. And I wanted to see if the governor's latest ordinance that he's approved, what about two weeks ago, addressed tattoo parlors. And you know, I saw nothing new in there other than, you know, no more than 10 people in an establishment. And you know, I was to be honest, underwhelmed, you know, and surprised. I was happy to see, however, that they have to keep customer records for 3 years, which would of course help with contact tracing should, you know, something happen and we find that there's a lot of infections at a particular establishment, which certainly makes it easier. And I know Chief and Mayor are already aware of this, but so we're on kind of a short leash here in the county. We're countywide, we can have 3 unrelated infections or infections other than a family group. And then we're basically on double secret probation with the state health department, where we have 2 weeks to get our ducks in a row and make some corrective action to bring our numbers down, or we risk all businesses being harmed by possibly a retraction of some of the variances that we've been granted. So there's a lot at stake here if we go over the 3 unrelated infections.
Anybody else have any comments?
I have a question. Diane, on something like this, do we typically hand out a copy of the state regulations to a business license applicant? You know, applicable licenses like this or regulations like this?
Specific to tattoo parlors?
Well, or any other that come in. I'm just wondering if that's just a general, you know, policy that we, well, in tattoo parlors, that's what I'm talking about right now. It's what, like 8 pages, 10 pages. And I just wondered if maybe as to determine this, would there be any advantage to documenting the fact that they were handed these regulations as they get their license from the city, just in terms of possible later contact and enforcement? They would have no excuse if they didn't know.
I currently do not give any handouts to any business.
Yeah.
regarding any regulation other than the vendor's license.
Okay, yeah. Well, it would be a bottomless pit, I'm sure. And
Yeah.
yeah, but I was just wondering if something like this, or a few of the other businesses, but this one specifically, if it might be some sort of advantage to do that.
What I would kind of like to see is us maybe adopt the state regulations. If you hear the CRS that Chief pulled up, have all of us take a look at that, see if it from what I saw that was presented in our packets, I think it's a very good basis for what we expect out of a place like that. And being asked, are you familiar with the statute and requirement you do? And is that possible, Carmen, just to adopt what version or the same version of the state, or is that not necessary?
Indeed, it would be possible. I think, to the points Chief was alluding to earlier, we could, as a city, adopt all or certain portions of those state standards as local requirements. And again, if we took the time, council, to adopt those by ordinance, and we can adopt them by reference, like we do the model traffic code or other kinds of, the IBC, the International Building Code, we could adopt those by reference, and then they would apply in the city of Idaho Springs like our own regs, which would give us local enforcement ability. Again, a ticket could be written to go to our muni court. If we had a license, they could come before you to explain why they're not complying and maybe get their local license revoked. Those would be the, again, benefits of taking the time to adopt those state standards by ordinance. Now, Mayor and Council, if Diane simply gave them and made them aware of the state standards, she could do that too, without us adopting them by reference. That would put them on notice of them, right? And would lessen their ability to say, well, I didn't know. However, if we got a complaint, if we had issues, what would we do? Well, if they were about those standards, we would be calling up the state and saying, hey, could you send an inspector? Hey, could you do something with their state permission? And they don't have a license. So that's the frustrating thing I think we all discovered, maybe Councilor Harmon and Chief, those of us who have sort of poked around to see how much attention the state is paying and what the state is doing, we've discovered not much. They're not really paying attention to these places. So to have any real local teeth, I would dare to opine, Mayor and Council, you probably want to adopt something by ordinance if you really want to be able to react in a meaningful way.
Okay. The other thing I'd like council, again, I think this is a pretty timely thing if we decide to do this, is to change that conditional use from the use by right. I think that it would be a good that council could make the decision whether we wanted another one where we allow another building or another happen, and we can use our own judgment on whether it's good for the city. Is it too close to each other, or we just have an abundance of them that that mountain art studio town, and and to be honest with you, to protect our historic character. This one is right outside of the historic district. That's another thing that we should talk about. Would we allow these in the historic district at all? So those are just some things that we need to be thinking about, and I'd really like to move forward and try to expedite this pretty quickly before we start having, a handful or two handfuls of inquiries coming in.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's a good middle of the road way to go is adopt the state standards. There will obviously get no support from the state, any timely support if we have a problem. limit the number. And
The location.
we're forearmed a little bit, at least, because I think we're going to be on our own here, no matter what.
Okay, anything else? Andy, you have anything?
I do not. Thank you, Mayor.
All right, with that, thanks everybody for the special meeting tonight and the work session. A lot of good information, and jot down notes and thoughts and ideas, and we're going to clarify by Carmen or whoever we need to contact. Well, about these things. So with that, it is 7:48 and meeting's adjourned. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Good night, all.
Good night, everyone. Have a good week.
Stay well, everyone.